All right, let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good afternoon, Tina Guo. My name is Claudio, and I'm calling you from Washington, D.C. Tina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Tina, let's go back to the beginning of your life. Were you born like in a musical family? I mean, how old were you when you perhaps began taking, before the cello, violin lesson or piano lesson or guitar lesson, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I was born in Shanghai, China, in the
Yep.
year 1985. And yes, I was born into a musical family. Both of my parents are music teachers, musicians. So my father is a cellist and my mother is a violinist. And to be honest with you, I don't think I would have been a musician, most likely if I wasn't forced into the family business, the family trade. And so it started off with very, very traditional, classical, strict, conservative lifestyle, musical universe around me. So for the first 18 years of my life, it was more, I feel like it was like a boot camp, a boot camp, a training ground, for cello development. And I know from my parents, because, obviously they were immigrants and we were very, very poor. And for them, playing an instrument was really for them the main skill that they had. And they just were I think they were just trying to give their children what they knew because that's the only thing they knew. So I went to school, I practiced a lot, 8 hours every day from when I started cello at age 7. I played a little bit of piano and violin before that, not very good. So finally I switched to cello. And yeah, and I've talked about this before quite a bit, but I'm very open about everything. And for me, my love for music was definitely a delayed situation because I have this like almost like a split bipolar, like split mentality and emotion towards music because growing up, I actually had so much hatred. I mean, I know it sounds dramatic, but I had so much hatred, frustration, a lot of negative feelings around it because it was something that I did not choose. And also it wasn't, I think it's different when people, they hear music and like, oh, what's this instrument? Or they're singing and they're doing music that they love. For me, I didn't have a choice. Like my viewpoint and my universe was so small because my brother and I, we were only allowed to listen to classical music or to opera. And that was basically it. So anything else was bad. It was a waste of time. It was not civilized, all of this.
Wow.
And for me, it just made me like many people, the more you like try to squeeze something, the more like internally like the angst, and the frustration grows. And so, but I had no choice. So I had to learn. And I think if you do anything for 8 hours a day, you probably become pretty good at it. And so I'm grateful. Yeah, I'm so grateful now for the amount of time that I actually was forced to play because of all of that technical dexterity, the muscle memory. It is important, of course, if you only have that, then you sound like a robot, but if you don't have that and you're only, emotionally, musically, then you're kind of limited also in what you can do on a technical side. Yeah, and I started hearing a little bit of music that was outside of the classical world, on the radio as I started getting older on driving to school with like people who picked me up. And for me, it wasn't really until I turned 18 and I went to USC, the University of Southern California, for classical cello performance. But I finally, left my parents' house and was able to access the internet for the first time and YouTube and was able to explore and listen to other styles of music. And I mean, there's so much more to say about it, but that was really like the moment when I think my eyes actually opened to what music can be. It's not just a forced like military style boot camp classical training. Yeah.
I got you. You, on the other hand, right, if it wasn't for your parents, you wouldn't be where I am right now. I mean,
Exactly.
The 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, or whatever. You concentrate, stay in the room. Take 10-minute break at the end. I mean, you have done very well for yourself. I mean, of course, it's very tough for kids, right? You didn't appreciate that then, but now, I suppose, right? So
yeah,
you have done
and it
well
really.
for yourself.
Thank you, and I'm grateful. Yeah, I'm really, really grateful for it. However, I do want to say because I'm not unique in any way because most Asian, I mean, I'm generalizing, but it's, you know, it's my own culture. It's very common in Asian culture to just push your children with extreme, you know, and yes, it does result in positive things, but there's something that I think culturally we don't talk about because it's not allowed, but mental health issues, you know, happiness, you know, and not, it depends, I think, on the person. Some people are maybe just naturally more resilient, you know, and that's not good or bad, but for that type of method of training, I always say it's not good for everyone because I've met some people who are, you know, it doesn't work out very well. So I always try to say it's a very careful, you know, balance that I still struggle with sometimes, you know, where I have moments where I'm like, you know, what else could I have done with my life or whatnot? But I think I've been able to find other avenues, you know, in addition to music that now kind of makes me feel more balanced and like a human, you know, not a machine. So.
Okay, I understand. So when you were in kind of high school and before you end up finishing high school, going to USC, you had, so your parents were telling you music is the only way to make it, classical music is the only way to make it. But so when you applied to college, right, and USC, and you were in California, were you able to apply to a different career? Like, I want to study medicine, I don't care what my parents say, or I want to go to law school, or classical music was kind of the only way, right? Because you were 18, right? You were, I suppose, allowed to, you know, complain, so to speak, or you more at the house, right? So.
So a few different things. But one, it was made very clear to me that, you know, of course, there would be no financial help from my parents. So if I did not get a scholarship, a full scholarship, yes, there's loans, and you know, we know how many people sadly are still paying off their loans even when they're retired. You know, so that's something I did not want to do. Second thing is, yes, because I did practice so much. I did reach, you know, a certain level. I've won a lot of competitions and blah, 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 all that, you know, all that stuff. And because of that, like, it was like I had schools reaching out to me, you know, saying they wanted me to go. I could have gone to Juilliard. I could have gone to different schools. And for me, I did not want to go to a conservatory because in a conservatory, there's only music, right? So I thought, okay, if I go to a school that has other classes, maybe that would be a good opportunity for me to also meet other people who do different things. But I think for me at that point, I just felt like that was the only thing, really the only thing that I was allowed to do, the only thing that I developed a skill in. And I was good at it, you know? So I think there was a side of something where, you know, even if like, oh my gosh, but then you play for other people or the other students, you know, in class, and everyone goes, oh my God, like you're so, it feels good, you know? So that's where it's like the weird, like I don't like it, but like the payoff, it's like, oh my gosh, I feel good. Like, okay, maybe this is, so it was a combination of financial, you know, restriction where I knew if I studied music, I could go for not free, but at least like the most of the tuition or all of the tuition was covered. Living expenses is something else. So that's, in the end, that's what happened. I was offered a full scholarship to USC, which is a very expensive school. And it was in Los Angeles. I wanted to go to LA, you know, I wanted to go to Los Angeles. And that's pretty much it. You know, I applied, I got in, and then I went to school. So
yeah, and then so you mentioned, well, you at the time you end up discovering the internet and YouTube. You began listening to different kind of music. You were living in school with other kids your age, listen to other kind of music that wasn't classical, right? Not so. What bands were you listening to? You remember or?
Yeah. So I skipped over this part, but when I was in middle school, I was 13 years old. So that was the very first time. I think the most maybe single eye-opening experience, because it was just one particular thing, but I was always attracted to people who were very weird, dark. You know, I was into vampire novels. I read all of Anne Rice's novels, like very like a lot of teenage angst, let's just say, but to level 1000, right? Because I am a very melodramatic and emotional person. So there's this one kid, he was a goth. long hair, black lipstick, and piercings. And I thought he was so cool. I'm like, oh, he's so cool. He's so weird. He's so different. I want to be different. And he not gave me, but he lent me his CD of Marilyn Manson, which is industrial metal. And that was the first time I ever heard anything, because that's not even on the radio. Like even in popular culture in America, you don't really hear a lot of heavy music. It's mostly rap, hip hop, R&B, pop music, being the predominant thing, country music, but you don't hear like heavy, like metal, industrial music, fusion music. And so when I heard that, and I remember in particular, The Beautiful People, which was like the hit song on that album, I like actually just now I felt it, like a chill like went through my entire body, and I said, oh my God, what is this? This is how I feel. Like I don't know what's happening. I don't know what the instruments are. I don't know what he's saying. Who are the beautiful people? I don't know, but there's just something so like animalistic and visceral that I connected with. I think because I had a lot of dark energy, in myself. And so there was that. And then after that, the only other music that I was able to hear, like I mentioned earlier, during the time when I was growing up, early 2000s, 1990s, there was like Limp Bizkit, and there was System of a Down. So there's some heavier bands. So I did hear that music, of course. But other than that, it was Guns N' Roses. So my best friend, her name is also Tina. She lent me a cassette tape of Appetite for Destruction from Guns N' Roses. And that was the first time I heard Flash guitar solos, and I think, wow, oh my God, that's so cool. Like it wasn't as dark, but it's still like heavy and cool. And so I already had that kind of like in my universe, but I couldn't access anymore because the internet was invented. I'm not that old, but like, the AOL CDs were around, there was internet, but my parents didn't allow me on the internet. So that's why I had to wait until I was 18. I didn't have a phone, I was very, very isolated, which I think in a way was good, in some ways. But when I left home, got to my dorm at USC, opened my laptop, blah, it was like I was just obsessed with information overload. So I looked up, it was the very early days of YouTube. There's not too much content yet, but there were videos, there were like instructional videos I remember Yngwie Malmsteen, when I discovered him. I think I related to it because he plays a lot of classically based pieces, like shredding on the guitar. And to me, I'm like, oh, I can play that, like technically, and he's doing it on the guitar. So I just need to figure out how to make my cello sound like a guitar, and then I can like use that skill to actually do something I think is cool. And so that Steve Vai, and then I think just listening to a lot of random stuff. Enya also, I know it's a totally other, like new age music, and it's like I think for me, I'm just attracted to anything that's emotional, like very, very, I don't even know how to say it, that like just makes you like your skin tingle. And it's different for everybody, but for me, it's things that feel deeper. I'm not quite sure how to put it into words, but something that just connects with, my experiences. And so for me, for some reason, it's like new age music, ambient, like meditational music, and then very violent music. on the other end, and then just exploring everything in between. And so, yeah, I when I realized, oh, wow, this is music. It's not just
classical. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, there's nothing wrong with classical music. I think now I appreciate classical music more, but it's just one language in a whole universe of many different languages.
Yeah. Growing up in South America, I was the opposite of you, right? So I was very rebel, and I was listening to a lot of music. So the bands that you just mentioned, a couple of them, I know all of them because I was listening to a lot of music. And I don't play any instrument. I don't know how to read music, but here in the DC area, I see close to 60 gigs a year, different type of music, and I have like I don't know, huge music collection, like 3 different floors of music. So I'm giving music, like 15,000, I think. Between CD, Blu-ray, vinyl, I have stereos in every room that were imported from Japan. So I have music is part of my life, but I'm a computer scientist, nothing to do with it. It just so happened that I love music, and my dad had an obscene amount of music. He told me he put records to me when they brought me back from the hospital 60 years ago, and when I was 14, I discovered rock and roll, jazz. The Led Zeppelin, the Pink Floyd, the Genesis, of course, jazz, and many. And I got lucky. I was able to come here to the United States to study, and then I began listening to the music. So very different upbringing that you. It was a lot of freedom also.
That's wonderful. That's really
So I
good.
got
Yeah.
I got lucky in my life as well. So when did you? So eventually you end up switching from kind of classical cello to more electronic type, right? So you learn on your own. It's a different process for someone who doesn't play the instrument, right? It was a
Yeah.
big change from classical to electric one, and a different type of cello. And for sure, they're very very expensive, like the one that you have on your right side there,
Yeah.
right? So how you
Yeah.
manage to afford one and switch and
Right, right. So my experimentation started, I think it was my first or second year of college. And so I continued playing classical music, and I very luckily started getting some gigs using the classical cello. So I was still playing classical concerts, but at the same time, wanting to explore more. So my very first electric cello from Yamaha, I searched for it online, and I was again very lucky. You know, a lot of things are, it's not just hard work, it's also luck, right? I'm very lucky that there's not so many people playing the electric cello. There was Apocalyptica, you know, they did that album, the four cellos, incredible group. And they did, you know, Metallica covers with their first album. So I heard that, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. So cellos can definitely play all kinds of music. But they didn't play electric cellos. And so there really wasn't, I mean, honestly, there wasn't anyone that was doing electric cello process like a guitar, like treating it just like a guitar, but with a bow. And so I thought, oh, wow, I love that, because if no one is doing it, I could do whatever I want and no one's going to tell me, oh, that's wrong, or you can't do this, you can't do that. Everyone's like, what is that? We don't even know. And so that was really exciting. I think it was the opposite again of having structure. It was having complete freedom. And sometimes complete freedom can also be bad because you get very confused because there's so many possibilities. But I went to Guitar Center. They like ordered an electric cello from Yamaha. It was a cheaper one. It was like the lowest model. And actually electric cellos are much cheaper than acoustic cellos. Very, very cheap, you know? So a grand, like 1,000, 2,000, which for a classical instrument is like nothing, you know? So, but at that time, that was a lot of money, of course. So I had my first student credit cards. Yes, I used, you know, I ended up with a lot of debt that I had to pay off later, just paying for instruments and stuff. And I didn't even own a classical cello. I was borrowing one through a foundation because I didn't have, you know, money to purchase my own. My bow was borrowed from my cello teacher. She was very kind. She's like, "Oh, you don't have a bow? I'll let you borrow this one." And so I used the credit card. Then I bought electric cello and I started experimenting. And I had no idea what anything was. Like effects pedals, amps. I'm like, oh, they don't make electric cello amps. Maybe I'll have to use it. I tried a keyboard amp. I tried bass amps, and just trying to understand everything. And really, the first 2 or 3 years of like experimentation, I was terrible. I don't mean like technically, because it's like I always tell people to take a very trained classical guitarist, you know, a wonderful classical guitarist, and give them an electric guitar. Yeah, they can play the notes, like it's the same kind of notes, but it's not the same thing. It's a different way you play. It's the attitude. It's like even like the way that you bow, the way that you strum is completely different, right? The technique. But at least you know where the notes are. So there's that foundation. So for me, it was the same. I was trying to figure out also how can I play standing? Because when you're standing, like the angle, the physics of it is completely different. When you're sitting, you know, the bow's resting, and then when you're standing, you're like also, it's just very, very like awkward. So I remember my cello kept like falling over, and I'm like trying to get everything. But after a few years, I think your body adapts, you know, and it's been a lifelong process. I'm turning 39 this year. I'm almost 40, right? And I started when I was 19 with the electric cello, and I feel like I'm still figuring out my sound and my tone, like guitar players, you know, trying to get like the right combination of sound. And so, yeah, it's a growing process, but as far as like logistically how that electric cello thing happened, like I got one, and then I started experimenting also with different bands. I've had so many band projects, I think 6 total, from before the time I was 23, that all failed, which is why nobody's heard of any of them. I was trying to do like metal cello and like a girl band, and I think all of those experiences were great in learning what not to do, what didn't work. And yeah, that's how I started with the electric cello.
And then eventually you end up drop in school, right? You take a leave of absence, and then
Yeah.
you end up, as far as I know, you end up creating a video. You uploaded a video to YouTube, and your life changed forever. Luck, destiny, hard
Yeah.
work, dedication, and probably a
Yeah.
combination of all of them, right? So feel free to elaborate on that. So
Sure. So, I was in school for 2.5 years. So a
okay.
couple different things. My cello professor, she was incredible. Eleanor Schoenfeld. I loved her. She was incredible woman. She was also my father's cello teacher. So she was, in her 80s by the time I studied with her. She was also, her and her sister, her sister's a violin professor, or was, because they both passed away. They're the ones who discovered my father in a recital in China and sponsored him out. So actually they were the reason that our family even was able to come to America.
Good.
Yeah, so that was also another reason, of course, that I went to USC, because it was like, it was part of, I don't know, it's part of like the family culture as well. Um, so how does that? So okay, I think one of the factors was that Eleanor passed away, unfortunately. So, and I was really there to study with her. I mean, she was like you go to study with the particular teacher when you study music. I think in other fields it's different, but in music, it's like you want this teacher, you go to whatever school they're at. And then sadly, she passed away. So they brought someone else in who was great, and I was studying with him, but just not quite the right, for me, it just didn't quite feel the same. And then also, like I mentioned, I had a scholarship for tuition, but as you know, in Los Angeles, it's very expensive to live. So even though I had a dorm, on campus, so I didn't have a car, so I had to stay on campus. And at the time, in 2004, 2005, it was 900 a month, and that is a lot of money. I mean, but I didn't have any money. I didn't know what I was doing, so I had credit card debt. I was taking out like advances. I took some school loans out, like from it's like government programs for people who don't have enough income. But at the same time, that was giving me so much stress, because another one of my life goals was to have money, because it was something that was just missing from my life. And I felt like there's so many things I couldn't do, I couldn't have, I couldn't, just because, okay, you have no money, right? And everything costs money. And
Sure.
so seeing all the debt add up more and more, I was like so stressed out. So I'm like, I also have to work. So I was doing a lot of gigs. I would post obsessively. I would post postings online on Craigslist. It's still around. Cello player available for hire. I was teaching piano lessons, cello lessons. I was doing gigs for like $20, to play a show with anyone who would pay me. Like I played funerals, weddings, bar mitzvahs, like anything I could do. And also there were some classical concerts. So I was very lucky that I was playing with some smaller symphonies, but thankfully, I guess due to my training, I was able to get some of these gigs, and I would leave sometimes for 3 weeks at a time. One time I did a small tour in Italy, with some orchestras doing concertos, and then Mexico for a few weeks. So anyway, you can imagine if I'm doing all of this stuff, practicing 8 hours a day, and then also not being there, my grades went from A, B, C, D, F. Like I didn't know what was going on. Like I literally wasn't there. And so in order to keep my scholarship, you have to have, of course, understandably, I think a B average or something to keep the scholarship. And I talked to my advisor and I said, I don't know what to do, because if I stop working, then I'm going to have more and more debt. I don't even know if I have enough credit to like get more, to just pay for like basic stuff, or even cello strings, all these little things that you don't really think about. I think when you're a kid, because you don't really think about it, but life is expensive, and food and all of
Sure.
that.
Sure.
So the advisor, she was funny, but she said, of course, it's her job to keep people in school, because that's what, that's her. But she's like, opportunities and concerts will always be waiting for you, but school won't. And I was like, isn't it the opposite? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. So when she said that, that's when I actually, maybe it's my, thing where I always do the opposite of what people say. I was like, that's it, I'm leaving. Just like, what? I said no, because what if I get my degree, I have all this debt, and then what if there are no, right now I have these like opportunities, they're small, but at least I'm making some money. Like, what if I come out and it's not there? So that's why I left school. So also, and I think if Eleanor, my teacher, if she hadn't passed away, I think I would have stayed, so that was another thing. So she was gone. And then I was trying to make money. I was already working a little bit. So when I left, a lot of things I did not think through. The health insurance stuff, also my instrument. I mentioned that my classical cello was on loan from the Colburn Foundation. I didn't think, oh, it's only on loan if you're a student in college. So when I left, they wrote me an email, oh, you need to return the cello. Oh, and so that was a whole other, I mean, there were so many moments of like sheer and utter panic. Like I had no idea what I was doing in any way whatsoever. So for a while I didn't have a cello. Like it was just all of this stuff. But I think when you just jump in, you have no choice. You can't go back. So you just got to keep moving forward. And it was a struggle. It was a struggle I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years outside after leaving school of just trying to figure out, life. I was living in a garage. Because I couldn't afford to rent like a nicer place. So I found a garage was a great deal at the time, $500 a month. I'm like, oh my God, it's cheaper than my dorm. It was half of it was owned by the landlord to park their car. And they put up like this, it's like a plastic wall, not a partition, a little bit more than just a partition, a wall. There was a bathroom. There was kind of a kitchen, but there was no fridge, no stove. It was a very, very basic thing, but I could live in it and I can make noise because it was in a very bad neighborhood, so nobody cared. And so that's where I was for a couple of years, just practicing all day because I didn't have that many gigs and trying desperately to like get more jobs, get more gigs. And after a couple of years, and my parents, of course, they were furious, like, are you crazy? You left school. What are you doing? But after 2 years and I was struggling to pay my rent, I had a car, I was paying everything. And I thought, oh my God, like maybe I made a mistake. Maybe this was a really bad idea because this is not working. Right. And then I thought, okay, before I give up, and to me, not giving up, idiotic fantasies, like maybe I'm just completely crazy. Before I give up, I really want to make a song or make a video just for myself, just so I have it, in the future. I show my grandkids one day, oh, look at me when I was, in my 20s. And I had met a music video director doing a gig, but like another gig that I was paid to do. And then we had talked about, I said, oh, I'm a fan of like metal. He said, oh, I like metal too, if you ever want to do anything together. And I was trying to figure out what to do. And so I was like, okay, Flight of the Bumblebee. I know it's the most cliche, overplayed piece, but people can recognize it, even who are not, with classical music. It's impressive, because people like fast playing. So I thought, okay, I could play Flight of the Bumblebee really fast. Maybe I'll do a metal version of it. And so I made the arrangements and then pulled a lot of favors. I spent the only money that I had left in my bank account. I'm like, I don't even know how I'm going to buy groceries or pay for rent the next month, but whatever, I'll figure it out. Like, I just have to do this before my plan. Actually, there was an opening in the San Diego Symphony. My parents live in San Diego and they told me about it. They're like, oh, there's an opening. I forgot how much it was, like maybe 50,000 a year or something, which was an astronomical amount of money to me at the time. I thought, oh my God, like, oh, okay. And there was health insurance. And so I thought, and so I was actually already prepping for the audition. So I was learning the music. There's nothing wrong with being in an orchestra. It's just not what I wanted to do. But I'm like, okay, I can maybe I should just come back down to earth and just be a normal person and just do that. So at the same time, I was prepping, but I just felt like I couldn't move on. Like, you can't move on until you just burn everything over here, right? So and I really, I guess in the back of my mind, I was thinking, oh, maybe like Metallica or Rammstein, my favorite band, the German industrial metal band, or maybe somebody will see it and rescue me and take me on tour and I can, not have to join an orchestra. But really, it was for me. So I was like, I'm not going to have any expectations. I just have to do it before I give up. Because it wasn't working, So I made the video, Queen Bee. It took about 6 months. Again, I'm so grateful to everyone who helped me with it because it really, like, we did it for very, very little. I traded a lot of favors. I'll record for you. I'll do this. I'll do that. We finally got it done. And then the video came out. And 2 weeks after it came out, I didn't get any messages from any metal band. None. So that was my goal. Nothing. It didn't work. However, John Debney, Brian Tyler, Hans Zimmer, like a bunch of actually like cinematic music composers. And I had done a little bit of recording in cinema music, but it wasn't really, I wasn't trying to work in film music. It was just, I was in LA, and that was kind of, kind of I guess the bubble that I was in. And of course it was exciting. I remember John Debney, he said, "Oh, I'm scoring Iron Man 2." I know Iron Man, like everyone knows Iron Man. He's like, "Do you want to come record on it?" But instead of having the guitar player like just solo over whatever that section, like maybe you can do it. And of course I said yes. So I said yes to every offer. But I think Hans was a huge one. So he contacted me, and the first film we worked on was Sherlock Holmes. So it wasn't electric cello, but he saw the video and he liked it, and so we started with Sherlock Holmes, then we did Inception, and so that I was working with Hans for a little bit, but even in that year, it still wasn't enough. Like you can't make enough money just from working on like 4 projects, as a recording musician. And then in December, I remember I got a call from a Canadian number, and if you get an international number call, it costs money to answer the phone. So I didn't answer because I'm like, oh, I'm not paying for a Canadian call. And they left a voice message, and they're like, "Oh, this is I think it was Andre from Cirque du Soleil, where we saw your video. We have a few new shows, and we want to offer you a position." And then I'm like, and when I heard the voicemail, I immediately called back and I said, "Okay, whatever this is going to cost me, $5, it's worth it, right?" So they offered me 3 different shows. They had Amaluna, they had the Michael Jackson, the Immortal Tour, which was the arena tour that I ended up touring with. And then there was a new show they were opening in Los Angeles. And I said, "Which one pays the most?" And they said, "Well, the arena tour, because it's the biggest one, and it's half owned by Michael Jackson's family, like the Jackson estate, after he passed away. It was a collaboration between Cirque and the Jackson estate into making one big, it's like a rock show, rock pop show in arenas, but with circus elements." And they brought me in. They said, "We want you to play electric cello, like the guitar player." And I thought, and they said in arenas. And I thought, oh my God, I mean, this was not, I was imagining it differently, but I think sometimes when we put out things to the universe, it comes around in different ways. Maybe not exactly how you think, but I thought, oh my God, you want me to play like the guitar parts, and I get to sound like a guitar player in an arena and tour and get paid for it, and there was health insurance.
Wow.
And it paid a lot more than the symphony position, like a lot. I was like, what? And so I didn't even negotiate. Like they just told me, I was like, yes, I'm coming, whatever you need. I didn't own very much stuff at the time, so it didn't, I didn't have much to sell, but I got rid of everything. Originally it was a 3-year contract. But I left after 2 years, but I had planned, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a gypsy for 3 years. I'm going to save all this money. I'm going to pay off my debt, pay off my instruments. And so, yeah, that was that was actually, I guess, financially, the biggest turnaround for me. And then also, I think it was an amazing opportunity to learn how to perform, because as a classical musician, it's a different culture, but also you're playing not in arenas, like, in a big hall, maybe for a few thousand people at the most. But I went from that, and playing in little clubs for 10 people. I went from that to arenas, so like 55,000 people the first night I ever played in an arena, right? And it was such an amazing atmosphere, because I was so used to people telling me, "Tina, you're too much. It's too emotional. Stop moving. So stop making those faces." I'm like, I can't control my faces. It's just what I do. That's in classical music. And when I went to the circus, they were like, more, more. It's not enough. And I thought, oh, really? Like, more. Everything's more and more. And I looked around, you see like the acrobats and the dancers. I was like, oh, they're so like extreme. I was like, okay, I think I belong here, like where everyone's encouraging you to be more, to like project to the very, very, like to the last person, right? In the arena. So it was an amazing training ground. Speaking of training camps, amazing to be around so many talented people who are actually not musicians, some incredible musicians, but people in other professions who are at the top of the game. And it was a great, it was a great adventure. And during that time, I couldn't work on film soundtracks for the most part because I was gone. And so with Hans and everyone else, I just, I went to the circus. I said, I have to go. I have to make the money. I have to do that. And then after I came back, that's when I kind of reconnected with everyone. And after I was on that tour for 2 years, I think with anything, if you do this, I mean, imagine playing, no matter how good the music is, you play the same show, the same music every single day, almost every single night, sometimes 2 times a day for 2 years. I think I started losing my mind a little bit, you know? So it was wonderful, but I'm like, I can't stay anymore. So I left, I found a replacement. And I said, now I have enough of a safety, financial safety bucket, not like a huge amount, but just enough where I had no debt anymore. I paid off all my debt. I had also taken a lot of like investment courses online. I was trying to learn about other things while I was on tour. And so I had like a small starting stock portfolio and like trying to do other things where I'm like, okay, if I leave and I try to do my own music again, I have a little bit of a safety net there,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So then I came back to Los Angeles, and then slowly I started reintegrating, you know, into the city. And it was hard at first. I think for the first year, I barely had any work. But yeah, eventually it just started kind of spiraling. I got back in touch with Hans. We did the first tour in 2016 of the Hans Zimmer Live, which has now, you know, now I'm still touring with this many years later. So I wouldn't say it's like one particular thing, but I think it's just a lot, like a lot of mistakes, panic, luck, opportunity, and then just, you know, it just keeps going and going and going. And it's exciting, right? Scary, but exciting.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. I'm happy for you. And then, so you came back to Los Angeles, and then in terms of your approach when, you know, Hans Zimmer or someone else, you know, reach out to you and they want to collaborate with you, you have the opportunity to be creative, or you need to play what they ask you to do, right? So XYZ movie, yeah, that Hans Zimmer was hired to do in London, whatever, right? So
Yes,
you
yes.
you guys. So from Hans Zimmer point of view, so they look at the script, they look at sort of the end product. So they hear the script, they have finished half an hour of the film, you know, whatever happened to be, right? And then Hans Zimmer is hired to do, you know, a particular part, and then Tina got involved. You pretty much they ask what to do, or you can go back and forth and say to Hans
Mhm.
Zimmer or another director, I think we could do this or we could do that, or it's more impressive to try that out at the end, not at the beginning, and blah blah blah. Right. So
Yeah,
how you
yeah. So I like, I guess my day job would be, I'm a soundtrack musician, so I provide a
yeah
service. And I try
yeah
to always be respectful and careful because, especially when you're starting in the very beginning, you don't want to be too annoying and give too many, like, because you're being hired to do a job, right? It's like, I don't know, it's like a builder being hired by an architect, and as they're building, they're like, you know, I think I have a better idea. I think you should move this.
yeah.
No, 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 no.
No, you
You know,
do what you're told.
that's yeah, yeah, yeah. So it really started off like that, and I worked, you
Yeah.
know, on a lot of different projects, on albums. Like, I would record anything, you know, as long as it paid, I would do all of it. And so I think for the first couple years, it was mostly just do what you're told or record something like that. And then I did, because I was, people knew that I could improvise, also on the classical cello, but the electric cello as well, which is not a common skill for classically based musicians, because we just don't learn how to do that. You play what you're told, you play how your teacher tells you. So it's the opposite of that type of creativity. It's more of an interpretation. You know, classical musicians are cover artists. Like, that's what we are. Like, we play stuff that's pre-written, and you play it a certain way. And we do it in our own style, but there's not too much like original unless you're a composer.
Right.
And so I started experimenting a little bit, and then I ended up actually slowly, I would be hired to record like more of my own stuff. Like, oh, like maybe just write your own stuff. And there was several years where I think when you're starting out in the industry, you're like afraid to bring things up, right? Because you're like, oh, I don't want them to be upset with me, or so I didn't ask for credit. I didn't ask for, you know, it's just, oh, okay, this is what you do. You like, you go in, you improvise like a guitar player. But I think over time, as I got more established and I understood, you know, the business more, again, it's a learning process. I started telling some composers, because I would work with them and then I would be writing literally like almost everything that I'm playing or adding other stuff. And I started asking for, hey, could we, you know, split at least the writing credit and stuff. So it started happening little by little.
Gotcha.
But yeah, yeah, and it depends on the project. I mean, some clients, like, they just want you to play exactly what they write, and that's beautiful. Great. That's very simple. And then in certain other collaborations, it's very different, where they want you to be creative. So it just depends on the project.
Right.
And yeah. So it's
And then you have your own, I saw a video, you have a very nice studio. So when Hans Zimmer asks you to, play a particular things or collaborate in a particular project, you can do kind of everything from home, and you send, files back and forth until everybody agree, because it's your piece, it's somebody else's piece, and so forth. Hans Zimmer, now Hans Zimmer life is very complex. It's a lot of parts, and it's Lisa Gerrard, and and a bunch of different people. So can you work nowadays a lot from home and send files back and forth?
Yeah, like prior to COVID, I actually was doing already, I would say about 70% of my work only remotely from my home studio, even though I was in LA. Because I felt like, oh, that's not being lazy, but it saves time, right? It's more cost effective and time effective for everyone, because they don't have to hire engineers. They don't have to hire an engineer. They don't have to hire a studio. Like, I do everything, right? And then I can charge more for the for that difference. But then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, everything shut down. So you could only do remote recording. I got very lucky not lucky that COVID happened, but I guess lucky that I was set up in that way already. And after COVID, a lot of composers, especially Hans, like now, like not everything, but a lot of it, like I would say a majority, at least with what I do, like 99% of what I do with him now is all remote. So everything's at home. I think it's easier for everyone. A lot of FaceTime calls, a lot of like calls back and forth. But yeah, it's great to be able to work that way. So very tech dependent. Yeah.
I got you. Have you ever, when you are sometime in the road, have you ever record in hotel while touring? If somebody, ask you, I know you are with Hans, you have a gig Monday, but you don't have anything on Thursday. Can you work a little bit Tuesday, Wednesday, and and send me the file from the hotel or whatever? But you don't have the gear. How you?
Well, okay.
You are on the road, right? So it's it's not like you are at home, right? You're in a hotel. You can carry, a couple of suitcases, your clothes, your makeup, whatever. So it's not that you bring in, a nice mic or anything, right? So.
Right. I mean, it is possible, because like when I was on tour for 2 years, with the Cirque du Soleil, now like laptops are so powerful, but I had my laptop, interface, a very cheap microphone at the time, $500 Rode NT1000 microphone. And so when there was more time off, because we were living like, on the road. So I did do a lot of recordings too. I try to keep my clients and get new clients. And I was recording on projects from the road. Now, I think as, many years later, now when I tour with Hans, for the most part, I actually just try, because the schedule is also pretty crazy. It's like we do a show, immediately we leave, and sometimes there isn't time to barely brush your teeth and shower and sleep, and you wake up, you do it again. And so I'm trying to find more balance in my stuff. So actually I've just started to implement boundaries. That's something I'm learning about, because I'm so used to saying yes to everything, like to the point where I'm like sick because I'm so exhausted, right? Doing everything. So now when I tour, I actually don't bring my gear with me. But like last tour, for example, I had 2 projects that came up that I really wanted to do. They're like major projects, big ones, and not too much to record. It was like the main theme for like a racing movie that Lauren Balfe did. And then I just borrowed an interface from a friend, because a lot of people bring their stuff, and it was on electric cello. Take the interface, plug it into my laptop, record, done. So it depends, on what it is. And there have been situations where, say there's like one day maybe, and the composer's like, oh, where are you going to be? Can I like send you to a studio and then do all that? And if I'm not like dying from exhaustion, then I'll do it. So it is actually really possible, which is crazy. And all of my, like, I'm on a new MacBook Pro with the M1 chip, and it's so fast that I do anyway. Even when I'm at home, my entire setup is running off of one computer, on this computer. So I just have all the extra screens. So you're able to do a lot, with extra hard drives and whatnot, with almost nothing. It's become very, very simple. And I know with Hans too, like when we're on tour, he has his computer set up. You have the stuff, you have the keyboard, but it's not, of course, it's great to have like a lot of gear, but I think coming from like a lot of us, we've come from like very, very little money, very little equipment. And you realize, actually, you really don't need that much stuff. I mean, it's good business for the companies making this gear. Oh, you have to have this and this and this and this. And of course it's nice, but it's really, you actually really don't need very much. I can't tell you how many, I don't even want to say which large projects I've worked on with like a $500 microphone and then like a cheap interface and, and as long as it sounds good, right?
Yeah.
No, you don't know.
I got you. I saw some videos, social media, where you are singing. Do you plan to pursue singing in the future? I mean, everybody needs to start somewhere as an instrument singer, writer, or whatever. Something that you aiming toward, or
I've always I think of I know I feel like I'm pretty self-aware, so it's not about being like better or worse or whatever. But for me, I know as a singer, as far as like skill-wise, of course I'm not like, because I never had singing lessons. Like I spent all my time playing cello. I know my voice isn't, to me, it's not the most glorious thing in the world, but I treat it more of like an instrument, right? Because I also play some other instruments, and I've always liked to sing, like, so for fun. A lot of my older tracks, like there's also vocals on it, but more of like ambient stuff. However, my most recent project, creative project that I've done, it's called the Water Phoenix, and it's tribal music. So it's like Viking music, but from ancient Asian, my Asian version. So I'm imagining like cave people in the area that's now known as Mongolia, China. And so with that, I am singing. And I like that because I'm like, well, if it doesn't sound that good, it's not supposed to sound good because I'm a cave woman, right? So do like weird experimentation, and that's really fun. So that is something that I started doing recently. I have 2 new singles that are I'm prepping to release, and I'm actually going to be performing it live at actually a very big metal festival at Vakin this summer. And so I'm in the middle of prepping all of that. So I actually, it was great because I did it only for creative reasons. I'm like, no one's going to listen to this. It's super weird. I'm just going to do it for fun. But then it turned out where now it's part of my live performance set. We'll see how it goes. Let's suspend judgment right now and see what people say when I do it.
I get you. What's the balance between, kind of open-ended question, what's the balance between coordinating your life as a session musician, touring, personal life, boyfriend, husband, whatever you have, and because I suppose you work, you don't have time for your significant partner, you're stressed out. Yeah, good money coming in. Of course, you need money to pay the bills, also rent, pay mortgage. But what's the balance for you? I mean, you I suppose when you are now you are back from Dubai, you re-examine your life, right? And say, man, I'm going to be 40. I'm happy. I'm not happy. Do I have kids? Do I have kids? What I wanna? Money's help, of course. Grammys on the wall helps. I have a nice studio, but where you still are pushing something important in your life, like, man, I want to get 3 Grammys with Hans Zimmer and 2 with this or Richard Dolan or this, or what's the balance between work, family, your person, you Tina the person, not the musician.
Yes. So I mean, actually, I love that question because it's something in the last couple years. I think COVID was what started it, because when you're forced to stop and everyone's just by themselves or examining yourself. During COVID, the beginning of COVID, the relationship that I was in with my ex for 4 years, that fell apart, but it was good. It was good that it fell apart because I was so busy that there's no time to even like, you just kind of like, oh, whatever. To think. And I think with my colleagues and friends in the entertainment industry, or music, especially, not how do I say this? It's like, it's very common that there's many divorces, many relationship problems, understandably, because I think we tend to be very obsessive, and you kind of have to be obsessive to be able to achieve, or even if it's just for yourself artistically, but also if you're like, like you say, if you want a Grammy or you want to be the biggest film composer or whatever it is, it requires that type of obsession. But we only have so much bandwidth as humans, right? And you can choose to do that, but if you do that, other stuff is going to fail. Like, that's just it's a myth that you can have everything at the same time. So for me, as a biological woman, for a long time, I didn't think about children. It was like, I didn't even have, I felt so insecure in not just my career, but like financially, even being able to, afford to live comfortably myself, that wasn't even something I was thinking about. But now, I'm 38, turning 39 this fall. Like I'm actually, my partner is a software engineer like you. And
Thank you. Right.
so yeah, so he works from home, his home office, which is on the other side of the hallway. I work from home when I'm here. And I think for me, okay, there's many different things. So we are planning on, having a child, where we've just started the process, because I'm like, okay, now I'm getting older. Women, unfortunately, you can't get pregnant forever. For men, it's different. It's I think they can, but it is harder for women, in a lot of ways, just physically, because we're not the same. Like, yes, okay, we can do this, we can do that, but we're not the same, like physically and other ways, biologically, especially. So now I would say my priorities have definitely shifted. I think prior to COVID, I don't think I realized how much stress I was under on a daily basis, and I remember there was one year that I got bronchitis 7 times in one year, and then the last time I got it, it turned into pneumonia. I was in the hospital for like 3 weeks. I was still trying to work. Like, it was just insanity. But because I felt that obsession, I'm like, I have to do more. I have to do more. I have to it's not enough. It's not enough. And maybe it was age, but when I turned like 37, 38, like something, I think I just was so exhausted and unhappy, like really unhappy. There's like moments of happiness where, you get, but it's to me, it's happiness on a shallow level. Not that music is shallow, but when you do it for accolades or, after a while, I think everything kind of you get used to everything. And I felt like, for me, again, some people, they devote their life only to their career and they're fine with it and they're happy. That's great. But for me, I think on the inside, I'm actually quite traditional. And then I was like, I don't know. I like all these good things are happening, but I feel empty. I feel like I don't even know why. Not why I'm alive, but like, what is my purpose? Is it the purpose? Yeah, to play music, but what am I playing music about? Like, if I'm just, my entire life is just working and then touring and then performing, and then I go back to my hotel room and then, back and forth, and I go home and, I don't have a relationship, or it's not like a good relationship. So in the last like year or two, like I've had a lot of like extreme, I got really depressed for a while, and it's like extreme, like self-realization, maybe. So now, I think like that's why now I really feel like, even though I'm still doing stuff, I feel like I'm operating in a good way at about 60% of how like psychotically obsessed I was before. And I think it's better. It's better to have boundaries. I feel more, I think, inspired artistically with my own stuff as well. And I'm not as hard on myself. So if there's some days where I'm like, you know what, I don't feel anything artistic. Like before, I think I would have been like, I would have panicked, like, oh my God, I'm losing this, or and now I'm a lot more mellow. And I try to keep a balance. Like I used to work 7 days a week, wake up at 5, like literally all day until like I was 9 p.m. or something like that, which I do think, again, is required at the beginning of building a business or building a brand or whatnot. But I think as time has gone on, like for me, I'm like, I want to have a family. I want to have those human experiences, which I think is what feeds, for me, it's what feeds the music. Because what are you playing about, or what are you expressing, if you have such a limited experience of human existence, of our existence. So that's where I am. I'm hoping that I'll have a baby at some point
Maybe
soon.
soon, right? Maybe next year when we do a
I
follow-up
don't
interview,
know.
you can show the baby. Good for you. I hope it happens.
Yeah.
I don't have that many questions left. My understanding is that you're going to be collaborating with Lisa, Gerrard, and Marcello De Francisci in the upcoming album, The Poetry of Life. I have become a good friend with Marcello, and the album is coming along. I think he planned on finishing the album in the next September timeframe or so. So a lot of big names, and you, of course, we are part of it. Phil, I don't know if Marcello have shared the track with you, but or have contact you, how's it going? But for what I heard, it's going to be a great album. A lot of, so feel free to elaborate on on that. You were with Lisa a couple of weeks ago in Dubai, but right? So I'm quite sure you have had
Yeah.
the conversation with her and so.
Yes, Lisa is. I always say she's a goddess, and I don't know what other
Of
word
course,
there is.
yeah.
She's the queen goddess, and like her music, I was such a big fan before as well, not just from Gladiator, but I one of the I mentioned all the bands that I had that
Yeah,
failed. The drummer in one of them was obsessed with Dead Can Dance. That's all he talked about. So of course I looked at it.
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
what is this? And I loved. I don't even know what you would call the genre, but it felt like maybe the poetry of life. It just felt like visceral. It felt like there's no. It's just you
yeah,
feel it, like there's no.
yeah,
So I absolutely loved it, like getting to meet her finally, through Hans, because of all the live shows and whatnot, was incredible. She's such a kind, beautiful person. And then when she asked me if I wanted to, because we hadn't collaborated directly before, maybe on the same projects but not like with our own art. And
yeah,
so when
yeah.
she reached out, and Marcelo, and asked, I said, oh my god, yes, of course, of course. So I was really, really excited. I actually have not heard the final mix yet, so it'll be a
Yeah.
wonderful surprise. But I'm just really excited to hear the track I worked on, but also all of the other amazing collaborations. There's so many incredible people on this, so I'm just really, really looking forward to it.
Good to see. You are. I was looking at your website. You have done. Besides the music, you are an entrepreneur. You are a businesswoman. You are a coach. You train other people. You work with branding. How you manage to do all this stuff? You're still very young, and
Yeah,
traveling, and you go. People call you to do this, to do that. You need to travel, or whatever.
yeah,
How
yeah,
you manage? How you manage everything? I mean, you need to be very, I suppose, organized. Because otherwise something fall
yeah,
apart. You need to. Hey, I have an appointment with this guy. I need to
yeah,
catch a flight tomorrow at 7 a.m. to go to Chicago, whatever.
yeah, yeah.
How you manage that? You have like an assistant, or who can?
No, no, no. I actually do everything myself. I'm self-managed as well. I recently
Yeah,
finally hired an attorney who negotiates certain contracts, not all of them, but the more, because I used to like
yeah.
read through all the contracts myself. I read a bunch of like music law books. I mean, I think when I was younger, I just have so much energy to burn and obsession, and that was good. But now, as I've gotten older, I think again, like people hold on so hard to try to be the same person or the same look or the same body as they were, 10 years before. But for me, like, I finally realized, I just need to stop fighting against. If I feel like I can't do as much, maintaining like mental health or my physical body enough as I was able to, like in my 20s, I could eat whatever I could eat, and I still eat an entire pizza once in a while, but because I love pizza, but I could eat an entire pizza every day, barely exercise, still very thin. So it's like everything changes, our minds, our bodies. So now, yes, I do all of these things. I do like the consultations, the remote recording sessions, my own compositions and projects. But again, I mentioned boundaries earlier. I think boundaries is the most important thing. For example, between now, and the time the Hans Zimmer live tour starts, there's about 7 weeks, right? I have a really big show I'm preparing for. I haven't even finished all the stems for that. I still need to finish 2 of the singles, the tribal music, cave woman music. I still have to finish that.
Yeah.
And so about 3 weeks ago, before I went to Dubai, because I was in Dubai like a couple weeks ago, I just wrote on Facebook, actually, because most of my clients and colleagues, as far as like soundtrack music, everyone's on Facebook, and so I just wrote, I would never have done this before, but I wrote, okay, I'm not taking any more sessions until I think I said like next year, any more new bookings, right? And I was like, oh, should I do this? Like, is this bad? Am I going to lose work or whatnot? But after I did it, it felt like, okay, now it's giving yourself permission to focus on other things. Same thing with consultation clients. I don't work with everyone. I mean, I appreciate that they want to work. I like look over, if I feel like I can't actually help them, I'm not going to take their money. I'm not going to just say nice things to them and make them feel good. So I think being more selective. And yeah, that's the biggest thing. So I used to be very not selective. I was like, say yes to everything, but because I do everything myself, I don't have, yeah, I'm not farming anything out. So everything is just me. And as human beings, we will short circuit, if we try to do too much, So yeah, I think just focusing more on the important things. Yeah.
Good for you. And I
Yeah.
think that the show with Hans Zimmer, Lisa, will begin, I think, mid September. And I told you before we went, I'm going to be attending.
Mhm.
I think it's September 13, if I remember correctly. They show in Maryland, here, not that far where I live, I live close to Washington DC. So I'm going to be attending. Then I go to Boston, and then I will be seeing the last show in Denver, September the 23rd or whatever it was. So I'm looking forward to hopefully meeting you after the gig, and
Absolutely.
and I know that I'm going to be meeting Lisa as well. You know, it's you know, you are an amazing woman. You have done well for yourself. You know, I don't know how you managed, man, but you did. You know, you have done well. You know, I suppose at the beginning, your parents were tough on you and stuff like that. My parents were very tough to me, and I criticized them many times. Now I'm older. My parents passed away. I mean, I wish I could have 1 hour to talk to them and apologize, forgive, whatever that happened to me, because I grew up in a Catholic family. And you have done well for yourself, and you know, keep on working hard, and hopefully you can get pregnant soon and have a baby, and keep on working and work. You know, be happy. You know, sometimes we like during, as you know, during the pandemic. At least in my case, I was rushing because I do a lot of different things between the consulting work, that's a computer consultant. I was doing a lot of stuff that I didn't like, and because then being at home, and I began this podcast, I began the radio, I realized, man, I'm doing a lot of stuff that I don't like it. I'm not happy doing it, but I was doing it because I didn't have enough time to think about it, right? It wasn't, and sometimes, you know, like smelling the roses or the garden or the flower, it's the best thing that could happen to us, you know? I mean, of course, money is important. Money is important. Yeah, you need to pay the mortgage.
Not the most important thing. Yeah, no, definitely not.
No, it's not, right? Yeah.
No,
At the beginning, right? We want to say,
yes.
I want to reach, I want to be famous, but you know, I'm older than you. You say, well, that's not a more important thing. You know, having kids and do the right thing in life, helping people out, I suppose, you know, it's the right thing to do. Very nice. You know, hopefully we'll meet at the end of the gig in NDC and in Maryland.
We will.
We'll celebrate when the baby's coming.
Oh, okay. Yes. Hopefully.
Yeah. All right, Tina, it was very nice talking to you. Good luck to you, and I will see you very soon.
Thank you. I'll see you soon. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.